Hi, this is Vishwesh, and this is my animation assignment for building virtual environment. So, as a part of this assignment, I worked on a couple of animations. Let's go through one by one. So, for this simple animation, I worked on a gemstone for my final project, and I created the animation in Adobe Photoshop. So this image which you see on the screen is created using Gemini and then edited using the Adobe Photoshop. So I removed the background after importing the image. Then I added a couple of layers to it. So, so to create this animation, I added multiple layers by rotating the angle. So if you can see at this, the frame 1 has angle of 0, then frame 2 has angle 30, and then frame 3 has angle 60. So this goes on up to angle minus 60, so it keeps repeating. So I added these 12 frames rotating by 30 degrees so that to create a circular motion, and then I added all those frames to the timeline. So here you can see when I start playing, so each frame takes about 0.2 seconds and it keeps rotating. And to create some emissive gemstone effect, I added this outer glow effects from Adobe itself. So when we click on layer styles, we get this outer glow effect. I enabled it and I set it to color matching to the gemstone. And then after doing this, I exported this into a sprite sheet from Adobe itself. So if we go in here, we have these scripts, and if we browse on these scripts, so if we browse on these scripts and check for Adobe folders, so this is my Adobe version. And then I'm going into these presents, and then if you look down for scripts, so we have a couple of scripts. So I used contact sheet.jxl script to generate this contact sheet, which later used as a sprite sheet. So the output of this looks something like this. So I have this folder, then I have this Photoshop. So the output sprite sheet is something which looks like this, which which we later use in our Unreal Engine to create the flipbook. I also created the flipbook using the same sprite sheet which I generated from my Photoshop. And I even also exported that animation into a GIF. So if I open this GIF, you can see that it plays around. So this can be used as a small rotating animation, like a simple animation generated using Photoshop. So this is so these are my scripts, like the different PHP files which I used, and these are all my frames. So these frames are gonna be used again in the Unreal Engine to generate flipbooks. So this concludes Photoshop part. And then if you go to Unreal Engine, so I have like bunch of stuff here. If we look at the content folder, I have an animation folder. So like you can see all these sprites are being exported from frame by frame. So if we look into this, we have this sprite sheet, which we just saw the output of the Photoshop. So this sprite sheet is used to generate flipbook. So it's used. So I generated flipbook using So from this, I generated the flipbook using the Paper 2D plugin. So this is the flipbook you can see, and so it has all the sprites listed in that, and it's also a rotatory motion. So it's a simple rotating animation using flipbooks. So to conclude, I extracted the frames from the sprite and then I converted it into a flipbook. So I applied it on my layer. So we can see the two gemstones over here. They are kind of rotating as expected. And also part of simple rotating animation for the part 1 of the assignment. I added the simple rotating sequence here. So you can see the same sprite like rotating around its own axis. It also revolves around the center stage. So this is one more kind of animation which I'm gonna use in my game. Later going forward, I'm gonna improve this and then use it. So if we look at the sequence, so we have the stone rotating sequence where I imported that flipbook and then I drawed it around like a circle, like a so like a circle joining everything, and as the time expands, as the time flows, it moves from one point to another point. So this creates a simple rotating animation without any rigs. And the rotation around itself is animation which is coming as output of the flipbook. So now let's move on to walk sequence animations. We close this sequence folder. So I have this two different types of walk cycles. So I wanted to use different walk cycles for different characters. So I have this kind of robo walk. If you see, the character moves very slowly like a robot. I created this using a static mesh from FabStore and then animating it using the rig controller. So using the rig control rig, animated this motion. And then I also have this walk cycle too, which is kind of fast walking. So I want to apply this on the human. It's not perfect, but it kind of works. So I like by choice made the hands to move very little so that I can use this animation as sneaking into the door or something without like a cautious walk. So if we look at these sequences now, so let's look at this sequence editor for this. So we see mannequin. So this is sequence. So this is the widget. So this is the walk cycle for this guy. So if you look at this character, so this comes with a control rig. So I use these rigs to manipulate the animation. So these are the control points. So we can use these things and then just manipulate it. So this has a bunch of keyframes. So the every triangle you look here is a keyframe. So it's a keyframe based and walk animation. So it starts from this position, walks around slowly like a robo, and then again it returns back. So after this, it again returns back to the same position. So if you look here, the first and last keyframe are same. And then if we look at the second walk animation which I created, so here is it. So this is applied on the other skeletal mesh. So this is a different skeletal mesh which I again got the skeletal mesh from the Unreal Fab Store. So this kind of works faster. If you can see, there are few steps being taken by this guy, so it's kind of a little bit crouch and walk, and it's leaning towards the back. So I just made it to lean towards the back, so it feels like a cautious walk. So it's the same thing. So it moves there and then comes back. So I'm using the same sequence editor along with the rigs, control rigs, to create these two animations. So this is part of walk cycle. And then I also have this bear walk demo sequence. So this is, I created this from scratch. I just got a skeletal mesh from Unreal Store, and then I created the control rig and everything to it. So we'll go through that. So this is a simple animation I created. So I wanted to animate like a moving on a static plane, like a treadmill or something. So it doesn't move forward, but it just animates as it's walking. So if we look at this, so this is the plane. So I got this static mesh. So if you can see, there are like bunch of bones attached to it. So these are all the bones which, so it has like bunch of bones attached. So again, we are using a Unreal plugin to create a control rig. So if we click here and then go to create and click on control rig, this will be converted into a control rig. And if we go into control rig, we can see the same skeletal mesh here. So this is same bones comes with the skeletal mesh. So after exporting here, we need to create the control rig. So I use this little graph to animate that. And later on, I'm going to improve this for my game. So if you look here, it has a couple of green and yellow blocks. So these are controls. So if we select them, so based on these controls, we can move the legs. So it bends back. So this is what entirely created by me. So I'll walk you through the process of creation. So I'm getting those controls and I'm getting transforms from them. And then I'm using a basic IK. So we are controlling the position of the leg based on the control. So if we look at this, this is connected to leg bone 2 controller and this is leg ankle controller. So we have, if we select on this leg and if we see, if we look at the back leg, we have these legs attached to it. So we want this ankle to be the controller. So we have the ankle controller attached to the effector, and we also specify that in the IK the ankle is the effector, and we have this controller connected to the effector, so which is connected to ankle bone, and then bone 2 and bone 1 are being affected. So again coming to this, so these axes are arranged based on the design of the skeletal mesh. So in this skeleton, the primary axis points to negative y, so it's in opposite direction to y, and the secondary axis points to z. So we have y and z as one. And then coming to this pole vector, so we need to have this, so we need to have this reference to the leg. So when it folds, where should the knee point to? So if you can see, if I just lift it up, the knee points forward as like a real bear or any animal walking. So if we remove this pole vector, we see that I precompile it. So we see that the leg moves around, like it twists and turns around. So it's always better to have this pole vector translation. So it's a reference point, and you can see this pink. So you can see it again always points towards the front. So you can see this green diamond. So these are the points of pole vector. So this guy always points towards this, and if we click on this, we can translate leg using the controller, and we can also twist it around so we can place them as we want. So the same is replicated with four legs. So if you look at the graph, these are kind of four similar graphs, but the axes are going to change based on the position of the pole vector. So the front legs doesn't fold backward, they fold frontward. So if you see, these legs should be folding backward, whereas the back legs will be folding forward. So this change can be made by setting up the axis. So I created this small blueprint for the control rig and created a complete control rig asset for the bear. And then if we look at the game, so this is one more animation. So let's look at all the animations in the scene now. So here we can see the coin is rotating around as we discussed for the first part. And then if you go here, so this is one more rotation. So it has a static rotation, it just rotates around itself. It's created using the flipbook, and this is a combination of flipbook and a rotation sequence, a simple rotation sequence. And if you look here, we can see that the robot walks, so it's kind of walking slowly like a robot. So it takes small steps and then moves forward. And if you can see, this guy kind of walks faster and slides leaning backward. So this is like a faster, cautious walk. And then we have a bear here. If you look at the bear closely, it rotates. So I added this rotation feature to the bear. And then it also, if you look at the legs, it walks. So even this walk animation is again created using the sequence editor. So if we look at the bear component here, it has a rotating movement. So it's set to 90 degrees. So it rotates around the Z axis, which we just saw. And it also has this walk sequence. So if we look at the bear here, so we can see all the rigs which we added, and then it has all these keyframes. So it's also a keyframe based walk sequence. It's a in place walk. If you look at this, it moves as like animal moves. We can see that the knees bend properly, and then it walks forward and then comes back. So it's again a looping keyframe. It starts at same position and returns back to same position. So these are the animations which I built for my assignment.